President Bola Tinubu yesterday reiterated that though painful in the short term, the removal of fuel subsidy was designed to free up budgetary resources for critical investments in infrastructure and social services. The president also disclosed that his administration has taken courageous steps to reform Nigeria's macroeconomic environment, with a focus on restoring confidence in the nation's economy. This, he said, the federal government was vigorously working to actualize through measures targeted at reducing inflation, stabilizing the foreign exchange markets, and improving fiscal management. This was as the chairman of the United Bank for Africa, UBA Group, Mr. Tony Elumelu, noted that while the Nigerian banking sector was a cornerstone of the nation's economy, it remains confronted with challenges such as regulatory burdens and high compliance costs, which impede growth and innovation. The president and Elumelu spoke at the 17th Annual Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, CIBN Banking and Finance Conference, held in Abuja. Tinubu was represented at the event by Vice President Kashim Shettima.
Nigeria's economic story is one of resilience, determination, and gradual recovery. Despite the global challenges, including the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, geopolitical tensions, and inflationary pressures, our nation continues to press forward. Our GDP growth recorded at 3.19% in the second quarter of 2024 reflects our commitment to laying the foundation for long-term stability and prosperity. The services and industrial sectors have been key drivers of this growth, showing that our economy is diversifying. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as a government, we have recognized the challenges and are deploying several initiatives towards addressing them. Some of these include macroeconomic stabilization measures. We have taken bold steps to reform the macroeconomic environment. Our focus is on restoring confidence in the Nigerian economy through measures aimed at reducing inflation, stabilizing foreign exchange market, and improving fiscal management. Though painful in the short term, the removal of fuel subsidies is designed to free up budgetary resources for critical investments in infrastructure and social services, and frequent adjustment of the monetary policy rate, a move aimed at curbing inflation and fostering a more market-oriented exchange rate system.
All right, Rufai, your take on this. I believe that the presidency has been consistent in saying that the removal of fuel subsidies is is in the interest of Nigeria and Nigerians, especially to divert those funds to critical infrastructure. Your take on this story?
As he removed subsidies, you see, you can't build a foundation on quicksand. The house is going to fall. The quicksand here is lies. Did he remove subsidy in the first place? You see, when I hear this rhetoric, it looks like political speak to me. President Tinubu announced subsidy gone. But also in his speech last year, he announced that they were going to hold prices of petrol, which has been held since last year. Is that removal of subsidy? They announced subsidy gone. NNPC is still importing. NNPC is still the major distributor and importer. That's not subsidy gone. Because subsidy gone ought to have a fair mechanism of a fair market. So when you look at the way things are, there's no truth, largely, in what has been said. The reason why prices went up is because we devalued our currency. If you were still going to prorate with the former price we were buying, if the currency was where it used to be before, it would not be this high. Now that they even claim that we removed subsidy, have they removed subsidy? I was away in an East African country the other day, and fuel was sold for 190 shillings. That's about $1.50. So if you are to look at the pervading prices of petroleum products across the West African region, it ought to be way, if a dollar is 1,006 today, it ought to be going very higher. So I don't think we've gotten clarity as regards that. Secondly, the problem with subsidy is the corruption of subsidy. Subsidy is not the problem, like I normally argue. And you cannot pull it out and destroy the livelihoods of people as we speak. That's what you're going to do. Every nation in the world subsidizes energy at some point. So let's stop deceiving ourselves and let's tell the people the truth about all of this rhetoric.
All right.
Okay, let us unpack the issue. First context, first the issues, and then the implications. The context is that at some point, as far back as under President Goodluck Jonathan, a committee set up, led by Agi Mokwede. I think Agi Mokwede was the head of that committee. Discovered that there was a lot of corruption, opaqueness, in what they called under recovery, as NNPC, as it then was referred to it. And the Agi Mokwede committee came up with the recommendation that the Nigerian government needed to eliminate middlemen within the downstream chain. That the Nigerian government, to address the issue of smuggling, needed to deregulate the downstream sector, where the Tinubu administration, the Jonathan administration, did not quite succeed with that because it generated a lot of controversy. Under President Buhari, we had the passing of the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021, Section 205, of which says market forces should prevail. Kerosene had been deregulated, diesel had been deregulated, and the recommendation of the framers of the law was that there should be deregulation downstream. Now the Buhari government postponed it and said, no, this will not be feasible because of what President Buhari said in an interview with Bloomberg, social consequences. That was the phrase that he used. So President Buhari avoided implementing the law. And then President Tinubu came into the saddle on May 29, 2023, and he announced categorically, affirmatively, that fuel subsidy is gone. Now, what Vice President Shettima did yesterday at the 17th annual conference of the Bankers Committee, which was talking about accelerating economic growth and management, the state of play and the way forward. That's the theme of that event. So Vice President Shettima, speaking on behalf of President Tinubu, now said, look, we have to remove fuel subsidy to generate revenue, to free resources, for social services and also for infrastructure. Now, economists in Nigeria all agree that yes, fuel subsidy regime was unsustainable and that you need to remove it. By the time Buhari left, Nigeria was facing a revenue problem. And we have seen under President Tinubu that there was indeed a revenue problem. The state started getting more money. The question to ask is, where is the infrastructure that the money they say they have saved from under recovery in the last 1 year? The Tinubu government is talking about the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. People are saying that is not the priority that they want. Okay? The only people who are praising the Tinubu administration with the way fuel subsidy has been removed are IMF and World Bank. And Nigerians don't like to hear that because the effect is that we have had high inflation, unemployment rate has gone up, cost of living has gone up. In fact, someone said the other day to me that what you are dealing with is not even cost of living, it's cost of existence because the hardship is so hard. Now, some other analysts have said, in fact, the Tinubu government mismanaged the proposal. In principle, no matter how good fuel subsidy removal may have been, because the government created a perfect storm, combining it with hike in electricity tariff, combining it with managing foreign exchange, which has created even more problems, and the macroeconomic reform that they say they are talking about, that perhaps not enough thought went into it, that they could have taken a gradualist approach instead of imposing a cocktail, of punitive factors on the people. But President Tinubu is saying that, well, the pain will be temporary, that the people must make sacrifice. How temporary would that pain be? We have been in pain since May 2023, okay? And Nigerians are saying, contrary-wise, that when you look at government, it looks like as if it's only the people who are making the sacrifice, not the people. However, at the end of the day, the major point made at that annual Bankers Committee meeting yesterday was about collaboration, the way forward. Tony Elumelu, chairman of Hess Holdings, made that point. The chairman of the conference itself, Joseph Alawuba, who is managing director of UBA, also made that point. Vice President Shetima also made that point. Where we are in Nigeria now is how do we find ourselves out of this quagmire? What is the way forward? To the extent that everyone at that conference is calling for collaboration, dialogue, cooperation among all the critical sectors in this economy, it remains for the Nigerian government to listen, to borrow ideas from people to move this country forward. That's what the Nigerian people want, not a perfect storm of a cocktail of factors that were not properly thought through.
Well, accelerating economic growth and development, the state of play and the way forward was the theme of yesterday's Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria's 17th annual conference. And at that conference, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was represented by his vice, Senator Kashim Shettima. And that's what we've analyzed this morning. What we're analyzing this morning, they are consistent defending of their economic policies. And the reason I started with the theme is because the second part of the theme talks about the state of play. What Nigerians want to know is if this government can be truthful and be honest with where we are currently. What is the state of play with regards to removal of fuel subsidies? Has fuel subsidy been removed? It has come under a number of names. Some people call it shortfall. Some people call it some gaps. But if the government wants the Nigerian people to trust, then they must be willing to tell the truth so that people are not suffering in vain if the announcement about fuel subsidy being removed is untrue. Yet we see prices higher, even though people say it's not reflective of the market value. What Nigerians are asking for is that if you're removing fuel subsidy as well, then let us see the critical infrastructure that the savings from the removal has made. And that is a criticism, unfortunately, for this particular administration, that we talk about the fact that fuel subsidy has been removed. When we do the calculations, it doesn't add up. So there's someone who is paying for something, and the Nigerian people aren't yet paying market reflective cost of fuel. And then also the infrastructure, unfortunately, we don't seem to have seen it or been able to benefit from it. What we had said is now, well, perhaps let's look at the way forward, because there's no use crying over spilled milk. We have complained and complained. It's now time for the government to begin to admit perhaps the way in which they handle the removal of fuel subsidy and begin to find ways to make it work. Conditional cash transfers, ensuring CNG buses, let us bring it to life. The implementation of the minimum wage, the new minimum wage, so as to make at least life bearable for the Nigerian people despite the mismanagement of the removal of fuel subsidy. But the first thing is we must get the state of play in order for us to begin to discuss the way forward.